those that don't know me, my name is James Spann. I have been in the sciences here for a long time. My background is engineering and meteorology. My first major in college was electrical engineering, but I had a passion for weather. Nobody told me it was a viable career option, and later I found out that it was, and so I would transfer schools and would finish in meteorology after 3 years of double E. But it was all great. It all made sense. So, but I live a really strange life. There are a lot of people that don't quite understand what we do. This popped up last year. This is an example of the weird life that I live, all right? Yeah, so this guy is going to wake up one day and realize that he's got my image on his body for the rest of his life. Gosh. If you could walk a mile in my shoes, I have the strangest life. Too much alcohol is a bad thing. I've been here since 1979, since before most of you were born. That's a long time. This is me when I started here at Channel 13. Used to have some hair. I was a good-looking guy back then. I mean, I was thin, had some hair. But I grew up in a fascinating era. Some of the people that had a big influence in my early career, Dr. Theodore Fujita. If you ever heard the EF scale, that's his scale. Les Lemon, Chuck Doswell, these are names that you don't know. And let me just say this, what I'm showing you today, this is a little inside baseball. I did a keynote at a large weather conference recently, and these graphics come from that. But I just felt like I needed to talk about it in public today. So anyway, these books and all this knowledge, it was a very interesting time to be in weather as a young person. These are two of my mentors. This is Al Mohler and Chuck Doswell. Al passed away from dementia a few years ago. Chuck's still around and doing fine. But anyway, this is a message for everybody in this room. Your cumulative experience in life, good times and bad times, and trust me, everybody in this room is going to go through some bad times. It's going to bring you to a day that will define who you are. And typically we only have 1 or 2 days like this in our lives. But everything that's happened to you, those experiences will lead you to that day when all of your experience is needed. I've had a lot of good times. I've had a lot of bad times. When I was 7, my father abandoned me and my mom. I'm a fatherless child. And I look back on that and it was horrible. It was devastating. My father left in the middle of the night and he never came back. He never said goodbye, have a nice life, see you later, anything. And we had to move away from this small town where we used to live in South Alabama. But I look back on that and some good things came out of that. Number one, I learned hard work. Let me tell y'all something. I am not good at what I do, but I will work harder than anybody else in this room. And hard work will lead to good accomplishments. And that work ethic came as a result of becoming the man of the house at the age of 7. And the other thing that happened, we would move to this horrible sounding place called Tuscaloosa. That is the weather capital of the universe. And I moved there as a 10-year-old boy in 1966. And growing up there in the decade of the 70s as a teenager and through some of the college years, I saw things you would not believe. You think the weather's interesting now, you should have lived in the 1970s. It was wild, it was extreme, and it was nonstop. And I think I had to experience those to get to a point to where I am today. But anyway, all of the things in your life, the good times, the bad times, every experience will lead you to your defining day. For most of you in this room, you've not had that day yet. Maybe some of you have. But I think for me, one of my 1 or 2 defining days was 5 years ago. This was April 27, 2011. Anybody live here then? Some of you were here, some of you were not. This is a map of the tornadoes we had. This was a multiple day outbreak, but the key day was on April 27th. On that one day, we had 199 tornadoes across the southeast United States. This is the map of the tornadoes we had in our state. On that one day, we had 62. I speak with children about every single day in schools, and I tell them, you know, you're going to tell your grandkids you were alive on this day, and they're not going to believe you when you tell them, one day when I was really little, we had 62 tornadoes in one day. And by the way, this is not unprecedented. You know, the media, every time something like this happens, they'll tell you this has never happened before. It's unprecedented. That's not true. We had an analog day like this in 1974. That was the year I was a senior in high school. That event changed my life. And we had an analog event like this prior to 1974, March 21st, 1932. Seems like they happen about once every 40 years. Doesn't mean the next one's going to be 40 years away, but it probably will be. Next time a day like this happens, I will be at Elmwood Cemetery, okay? But what we have to do is take the knowledge that we have gained from this and pass it on to the next generation. We had 3 EF5s. These are very rare. These are side-by-side EF5s. Number 41 hit Smithville, Mississippi. Number 38 came up through Hackleburg and Phil Campbell. Number 50, by the way, you think tornadoes don't happen in mountainous areas? Go up to DeKalb County and get up on top of Lookout Mountain. That's about 1,800 feet. It doesn't matter. All these old wives' tales about tornadoes don't happen in valleys or in all these places, that's just not true. For big tornadoes, it doesn't matter. Let me show you number 37. This is the first tornado of the afternoon. By the way, that morning we had 5 deaths and 250,000 people with no power. The morning event was a tragedy, and we had a few midday hours to get our infrastructure working again. And this is one of the cameras that was down during the morning, but it's back. This is graphic violence. I don't sit around and watch this on YouTube. I just posted 8 hours of our coverage on YouTube this morning. It was a 30 gig file. And some of this was stuff that I've not seen since the day it happened. But this came through a town of 25,000 people. This is an EF4. And this is the way that the system should work. Prior to this, we had an excellent tornado warning, which is our message if we believe there's one down. And people in Cullman County knew how to get the warning, and they turned on the television, and there it is. They didn't have to go look out the window. They didn't have to go walk out in the front yard. We know that humans like to confirm what they're hearing. They like to do that, but in this case, they saw it and they went to a safe place, and they're fine. This place was torn up. But what's amazing to me, we call the Cullman Regional Medical Center, which is the hospital in town, and after this came through town, they said not a single person has died, which is astounding because the system worked. By the way, this is a communications tower. If you see it right here, this is a freestanding tower by First Baptist Church of Cullman. You'll see that collapse, and you'll see the tornado cross over US 31. The tower is right on US 31. First Baptist Church is there right across the street from First Baptist Church is the Cullman County Courthouse, or what it was back then. And what's amazing, you'll see the tower collapse. I didn't have time to focus on that. We were just trying to tell people what to do and where to go and do it in a calm way. And there's no manual on how to do this. This was an interesting day for me in that we had multiple violent tornadoes down at the same time. I mean, this was a horrible day. But again, this is fascinating. And I bet y'all have probably never been to Cullman, Alabama, but I have. Y'all look like a bunch of city slickers in here. Watch the communications tower right there. Watch it collapse right now. And now you're going to see parts of First Baptist Church and the Cullman County Courthouse being lofted. These are massive parts of large buildings. Again, this is pure graphic violence, and I don't like to sit here and watch this. And we lost power at that point. This is another tornado that day. This is an EF4 that hit Tuscaloosa, and this was hard on me. I told you my story. I moved here when I was 10 years old, strangers in a strange land, me and my mom. And there were some wonderful people that loved us and encouraged us and helped us, and having to see this was horrible that day. This is coming through a neighborhood called Rosedale Estates. We did a very, very, very poor job of reaching low-income families, and shame on us. And here's the thing, the physical science was so good this day, and yet the loss of life was so high. The only number I care about, there is one number, and I'm a numbers guy. The only number I care about this day was 252. Anybody know what that number represents? The number of people that died. That is inexcusable for anybody in this room and for anybody in the weather enterprise. How could the physical science be so good with excellent warnings and all these people died? I thought the death toll this day should have been 30, and that in itself is a tragedy. But 222 people ought to be in here having lunch with us today. These were precious people that died. They were just precious people. By the way, you can see the debris here. A lot of this fell from the sky over downtown Birmingham. Parts of the city of Tuscaloosa were lofted, and if you were outside that evening, it fell from the sky, which was horrifying. personal belongings, parts of people's lives. And by the time it got to Birmingham, you couldn't see it. I tell people all the time, everybody wants to be a tornado chaser. That doesn't make any sense in Alabama. Number one, what do you do when you catch it? And number two, you can't see these things. They're typically wrapped in rain. Many of them happen at night. We have hills and trees that block your view. This is the tornado coming. Okay, I didn't have the Birmingham set in here. Let me show you some faces. And this is what drives me. You don't know these people. I did not. Danielle was 2 weeks away from graduating at the University of Alabama. She was killed instantly. She wanted to be a social worker. She was from Morgan County, and she was a very precious person. This is Minnie Ackland. Miss Minnie was killed instantly when her car was lofted on Interstate 359. Why were people driving that day? Are we not clear in our communication? See, all these questions I didn't have an answer for. After this happened, I didn't talk about this for 6 months. I had nothing to say. You come up to me and say, what do you think about that day? I didn't say anything. But now I've gone through all these phases. I went through the grief and the anger, and now I'm ready to fix the problem. We've all got work to do. We do in the weather enterprise, and you do. Miss Minnie was killed instantly. Her car was lofted on Interstate 359 in Tuscaloosa. Angel was a 6th grader at Piedmont Middle School. I know y'all have never been to Piedmont. Small town north of Anniston, east of Gadsden. I talked to her class 3 months before she died. These are brother and sister Haley and Mikey Kreider. They went to school at Concord Elementary School. Concord is a suburb west of Birmingham. Everybody said Miss Bessie had the best smile in the neighborhood. She lived in Pratt City, which is a part of the city of Birmingham. Jonathan and Justin Doss, they were brothers. They were killed. They lived in Cordova, a small town in Walker County. And let me just say this, people that live in rural parts of this state are discriminated against just because they live out in the country. It's astounding to me. I go from some of these TV markets and they will be on the air doing long form coverage if there's a tornado in the metro area in the city. The minute it gets out of the city, they go back to Freak of the Week or whatever's on television. I don't even watch television. That stuff's a cesspool. And what's their point? So what they're telling you, if you live in the city, then your life is important. But if you live away from the city, we don't care. We couldn't care less. And we've got to fix that. There are so many problems people in rural Alabama deal with, you wouldn't believe. And I am from Greenville, Alabama, and I bet y'all have never been there. And if you ever get a speeding ticket there, call me. My best friend is the mayor from 1st grade. Greenville is between Montgomery and Mobile. If you ever go to Gulf Shores, you'll drive through Greenville. But they lived in rural Alabama. Carrie left behind her husband and a newborn. She was killed by the tornado. And this is Ashley Harrison. I have a hard time going through this. I have a very emotional attachment to this day. And again, Ashley was 2 weeks away from graduating. She was from Dallas. Her boyfriend was Carson Tinker. Carson was the long snapper for the University of Alabama football team. When her parents accepted her diploma, 2 weeks, actually, they had to postpone the graduation. The graduation was not 2 weeks later. It was scheduled to be 2 weeks later. It was later in the year. But I want everybody in this room to look at the pain in Mrs. Harrison's eyes. It's visceral. You can feel it. And this is what drives me. You get mad at me for cutting off your program. You know what? I don't care. I'm sorry. That's all I see. Too many funerals have happened on my watch. And if you want to watch Freak of the Week on television, go look at it on your phone or the internet or something. You can see anything on TV somewhere else. We've got to stop this. And again, my focus in my career, it's going to be fixing this problem as we go forward. And again, the odds of us having another day like this in my lifetime are very small. And every time we have a severe weather threat, people will ask the question, will this be like April 27, 2011? And I don't even answer that anymore. That's a bad question. Of course, the right answer is no. That's a generational event. That happens about every 40 years. But let me tell y'all something. All it takes is one in the whole state. And if that comes down your street, guess what? That's your April 27. We had a 16-year-old girl that was killed in January of the next year, 2012, Christina Heichelbeck, January 23rd. That's their April 27th, okay? If I'm not good at communicating the emotional impact of this day, again, I'm a math, science, engineering guy. But this author did a remarkable job. She got the science right, she got the stories right. This is a hard read, but it's a read everybody in here ought to make. And I'm not selling books. I have no financial interest in this. I'm just saying she got it right. Read that or listen to that, and that will give you a better idea. I can't communicate effectively the emotional impact this had on this state, but boy, she did. That's an unbelievable book, and the fact that she got the science right makes it really special. So I would encourage reading that. And I bet you I'm the only guy in this room that has ever seen the movie called Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And again, I'm making some challenges to the weather enterprise, and really these graphics you're seeing today, it's directly out of a challenge I made to them, and I just wanted to clue you in on some of the things we're working on. And let me just say this has helped me. There are some people that will not take responsibility for anything unless a government worker pulls them out of their house, puts them in an underground bunker. They will claim that they got no warning. I can't help them. And I want to focus on the people that do want to get help, the ones that do want to take responsibility. And I'm going to skip through this. This is for the TV people and the weather service people. They're in our business now. They're in the mass communication business. Again, people think of me, they think of me as being some guy on TV. On a normal day like today, I reach 3 times as many people where? Across social media platforms than television. 3 times as many. It's not even close anymore. Weather Service in Birmingham, they got 78,000 people like that page. They're reaching a mass audience. They're in the communication business too. I'm challenging these guys. You've got to learn to communicate. We all do. And some of these old boundaries that we have just don't make any sense. But this is my challenge for the weather enterprise. And as we go through this, I'm going to share some things that might help you get through the next time we have a bad day. This is one thing we're going to work on. And by the way, everybody in here should understand this. If you don't, please allow me 2 minutes to explain. Every day we have a branch of the National Weather Service called the Storm Prediction Center, and they issue a severe weather outlook. And if convection is expected that day, you will be in one of these risks. You'll have just general thunderstorms, not expected to be severe. The lowest severe weather risk is called marginal. The standard risk, and this is slight. I don't like that word. I think that slight is not a good word. When people hear slight, they think, well, nothing's going to happen. Slight is really the standard risk. Most of our severe weather occurs on slight risk days. So if we are in a slight risk, that is significant. Then you go above that to the enhanced risk and then a moderate risk. And then moderate risks are fairly rare, and the high risk is really rare. In a typical year in our state, we might have 1 high-risk day a year, 1 out of 365 days. And again, this is issued every day. If you watch our weather products on television or the blog or across the videos or social media, we typically communicate this, and it's very important for people to understand this. And the guys at SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, issue these 8 days in advance. And it's very helpful. It's a very helpful product. This was the convective outlook the day of April 27, 2011. You could not have drawn that any better if you knew what happened. I mean, this is stunning how good these guys are. I was at a conference at the University of South Alabama in Mobile this past weekend. I was one of the big speaker guys with Rich Thompson of this agency. Rich is one of the best we have in our business. And I say, you're like the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers. You are the best of the best of the best. And that's amazing. But you see that high risk. And again, this is rare. You might see 1 of these a year. A moderate risk is pretty rare, maybe 3 a year. The enhanced risk all the way up to Buffalo, and the standard slight risk all the way into New England. And again, surrounding that, we have the marginal risk. But this works so well. And one of the things that's disturbing me now, I'm seeing within the National Weather Service, different agencies using different colors and this is insane. This is what we use. This is the Storm Prediction Center. This was an outlook back in February on the 23rd. And this is, here we go. You see the risks down here. The green, the light green, that's just non-severe storms. Marginal is the darker shades of green. The standard slight risk, it's the yellow, and the enhanced risk is the shades of orange. So here comes the local office, and they've got different words and different colors, and lines are in different places. That is mass confusion, and I am working with every fiber in my body to stop this, to get this stopped. And it's even worse in the television business. Some stations now are doing these aware days, and I'm not blaming any local person. Everybody in this city, we're working together. We have met over the last few weeks and months trying to standardize some things. This is a corporate thing we can't control. I have no idea what this means. Weather Aware is designed to make you aware of the risk of inclement weather for parts of the area. I don't even know what that means. But if every station's doing their own thing, it creates confusion. We know that confusion is creating problems. This is a parameter we use in the weather enterprise called the STP, the Significant Tornado Parameter. Rich Thompson, my friend, and John Hart came up with this index many years ago. And this is open-ended. It really technically has no termination up here at the top. Once you get up here above 3, it's very significant. This was a severe weather day back in June of 2013. The STP values were around St. Louis. We're peaking around 5. It's a great index. We use it across the industry. So if you want to know how the sausage is made, there you go. This is the actual calculation done by Thompson and Hart. And what I'm saying, nobody needs to memorize this, but this is a good industry standard, the Significant Tornado Parameter. So now these guys at the Weather Channel come up with their own thing, this Torcon, which is idiotic. And I have a lot of friends that work there, a lot. And this is not an indictment against any individual. I'm sure the marketing department came up with this. So now when we have these tornado threats here, somebody will say, what's the Torcon number? I don't even know what that means. I have no idea what that means. And if everybody does their own, and people say, well, what's wrong with it? Well, here's the problem. So the Weather Channel has a DEFCON or whatever this thing is, a 5. The guy at Channel 6 has a 3. I've got an 8. The guy on Channel 42 has a 7. It is mass chaos. We have to be standard as a weather enterprise to present this stuff during or before and leading up to big severe weather outbreaks. And I'm working with great passion to get this corrected, all right? But this is what's killing us. This is what's killing people. It is the confusion factor, and we know that that had something to do with some of those that died April 27, 2011. And goodness, we have got to get past this. And again, we got to work on not only severe weather, but winter storms. And let me just say this. We're pretty good at severe weather. At winter storms, we have a limited skill set. Have you noticed? Let's go back 2 years. Where were you January 28th of 2014? The words you will never hear us say are dusting and no travel problems. That will never come from my lips again. And you know what? The forecast really wasn't that off. What was off was the impact. That's all that matters. It is the impact. We figured there'd be some light snow. And how many inches of snow do you think we had that day? 2. People up north would laugh at this. Why do you think this happened? We didn't know. Look, by the way, people were down here burning anything they could to stay warm out of their car. This was a humanitarian crisis. Some people were stranded down here for 20 hours or longer. They were cold, hungry. They had no fuel for their vehicles. They had infants that needed formula. People needed medicine. We had 5 people that died, okay? And what happened was the fact that we had accumulating snow and the temperature was 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That has not happened here in the 37 years on my watch. Traditionally, when we have accumulating snow here, it's in the 30 to 36 degree range. It is radically different at 20, the ice accretion process on roads, and we didn't understand. And the truth is, I'm not a highway engineer. I'm not so sure I should be on television telling people about driving problems. That is not my training. I've learned this years ago, and I think this is a good thing to think about when we're on television. Tell them what you know and don't tell them what you don't know. So we've gone and taken some short courses on ice accretion on roads. But what happened, we had some melting. When the snow started, it was very light. We had some melting, and then we had a flash freeze. We have no experience with that, none. And that led to a base of ice that basically had the same impact as a crippling ice storm. And, you know, everybody in this room, if you lived here, you got a story to tell. We all do. I was going to speak to a school in Tuscaloosa. like I do every day. And by the way, I'm typically teaching 3rd and 4th graders science. Having adults in here, it's really creepy, okay? I mean, nothing. You guys are way too quiet, and I'm just used to the gym full of 3rd and 4th graders. I love getting kids excited about science. But I was going to teach a middle school, and I stopped at the rest area near Mercedes, and all I saw in my Twitter feed, pictures of wrecks in Tuscaloosa and Northport. And I did not have time to think, I just had to react. And sometimes in your life, you don't have time to think, you react. And I knew I had to get back, and by the time I got back to Hoover, I was fishtailing, and I ultimately, like many of you, ditched my car and walked to the TV station. But again, we've got to, as a weather enterprise, communicate uncertainty. There's so much we don't know. There's so much we can't do. What do you think the one thing missing in the science of meteorology is today? Humility. Quite frankly, it's missing in life. I don't know what it is. It seems like in the last couple of decades, our science has attracted a bunch of narcissists where they think they can do no wrong. Let me tell you what, if you do what I do for a living, this will bring you to your knees. You will know how much you don't know as you get older. That becomes more clear. And I tell these young kids, trust me, by the time you get to college, if you major in meteorology, there's going to be a whole lot of things we don't know. But we have to communicate uncertainty because there's some things we can't do. I wrote an apology for that forecast, and a lot of people in the weather enterprise just couldn't believe I did that. And these are the narcissist guys that think we can do no wrong, that every forecast is always right. There is no error. That's a bunch of baloney. Some of the mail was pretty hard to read. I have a folder called Hate Mail. If I ever think I'm something special, I cruise over there and read some of these. We had to cut off an NBA basketball game, Christmas Day. The first email I got, you know what it said? It said, you should have been aborted by a coat hanger. This is what I deal with. You walk a mile in my shoes, I have no feelings left to hurt. I mean, you can't hurt my feelings. I don't have any. But I thought this was good. And again, this is hard to read, but this was appropriate. It was signed, and these are the ones I need to read. It says, it looks like you got it wrong yesterday with your prediction of a light dusting and no accumulation. How can you guys be so badly off as hundreds still sit in their schools and hundreds remain in their cars on highways, and no telling how many have had to leave their cars stranded and knock on strangers' doors for shelter while others have paid the ultimate price trying to drive. And we did have loss of life this day. How can you be so wrong? Has everything with your career over the past years gone to your head? You were still expected to be vigilant and not complacent. What a shame as I think of the people out there and the ones who are dead. This is a hard read. There's going to be a time in your career where you start thinking, all right, I'm pretty good. And then all of a sudden this happens. And you realize you're not as good as you think you are. So another thing we're working on in the weather enterprise is communicating uncertainty and explaining the limited skill set we have during situations like this. But for those of us in the business, this is what I'm trying to encourage people to do, is to have the heart of a servant. We have to have less pride and more humility. My position is that of a servant. My position is that of a public servant, providing this information. And this is what I'm going to chase a rabbit here. I forgot this was in here. We've had some, people, look, there are three kinds of people I deal with: trolls, haters, and know-it-alls. I mean, it's amazing how much negativity we deal with. But when we deal with negativity from these guys, they try and discredit what we do. We had a pretty bad tornado outbreak in Pickens County, Alabama. I bet y'all have never been to Pickens County, have you? Aliceville, Reform, Carrollton. This is near the Mississippi state line. We had an EF2 tornado that came through a very rural part of southern Pickens County. 50 people could have died easily. And how many people died that day? 0. They heard the warning. They had a community tornado shelter. And these were structures that you might not want to be in. And they got there and everybody was fine. That night on the network news, what does this say right here? Tornado strikes Alabama without warning. Come on! This is crazy. The warning was in effect almost 40 minutes before the thing got there. They just make this stuff up. It was stunning to me how they make this stuff up. We had a correspondent for NBC News on our show, Weather Brains. We've been doing a podcast for 10 years, and he was very kind to come on the show, but his package was clean. It was the anchor that said that. And this is a common problem. And by the way, this is the tornado warning polygon. And by the way, one thing we have learned, people don't understand how warnings work. Let me chase a rabbit while I'm looking at that graphic, okay? Some people hear that Jefferson County is under a tornado warning. Does that mean the whole county? No. We have not issued warnings by counties in 9 years. We issue warnings based on geometric shapes called, thanks for playing. Yeah. Y'all are awake. Polygons. A tornado, even a large tornado, an EF5, it's small compared to an entire county. If there's a tornado down in Warrior, 35 miles north of downtown Birmingham, you don't need to do anything here. You're not in danger. And this is the polygon warning for the storm that hit the little community down here. It's called Saps. This is Aliceville. The hook echo is down here. That's the inflow notch that came right up through here. They had plenty of notice. And again, notice there were some parts of Pickens County like Ethelsville. They're not in that polygon. And the first thing I do when I'm on the air, I say, these are the people that are in. And if you're in, you do something about it. And if you're not, don't worry about it. These polygons allow for great error here. We've never had a tornado during a tornado warning get outside a polygon in 9 years. So that it's very effective. And by the way, chasing another rabbit while I'm thinking about this, one thing that killed people April 27th was the inability for people to hear warnings. And I'll hold that till the end. I got about 10 more minutes here. And we also know that the reason some people died was the inability of them to have a readiness kit where they go in their safe place. Everybody in this room ought to know where you're going, where you live. Everybody. The time to think about it is not when there's a tornado 5 miles away. A lot of people do that in the state, and that's horribly wrong. The time to think about it is on a nice day like today. And you don't have to be underground to survive a tornado. You don't drive in your car. A car is a death trap. But wherever you go, and it's a small room, lowest floor, near the center, away from windows, we want people to have some stuff like helmets for everybody. Bicycle helmets, batting helmets. It sounds silly if you're an old man like me. But we know a lot of people died April 27th not having a helmet on. We had some people that bled to death in open fields. We also like everybody to have a whistle or an air horn. First responders have been trained to listen for that. And what happens in a violent tornado, people are lofted. This is a horrible thing to think about. They're lofted. They often will land 100 yards away from where they started. The first responders can't find them. They're not able to vocalize because they've been injured. But most people can squeeze an air horn or maybe force some air through a whistle. But the air horn is a better choice. And hard-soled shoes, I have no telling how many people had to have their feet amputated. After April 27th, they were walking through a tornado debris field, bleeding to death in shock, with bare feet or socks or tennis shoes. You have to have hard-sole shoes. So the three big things we're pushing in that kit, it's helmets, whistles or air horns preferably, or hard-sole shoes. But look, she said the same thing just a few years ago. Tornadoes strike Alabama with no warning. Where there was a warning, this was for January 23rd, 2012. They had 40 minutes lead time. It was an excellent warning. That thing, it came through Clay and Center Point. That could have killed 55, 60 people. And she came on TV and said, tornado strikes Alabama with no warning. They're making this stuff up. I sound cranky today, don't I? But what are they doing? They are discrediting everybody in the weather enterprise. They're discrediting those men and women that work at the Storm Prediction Center. They're discrediting the men and women that work at the National Severe Storms Lab and research. They're discrediting the people in academia that teach. They are discrediting those of us in operational meteorology. And if the people listen to them, our warnings are never any good because tornadoes always strike with no warning. Now, this one got into a Twitter storm. I challenged Diane to a debate. And we had all these memes, you know. I don't know who makes these memes up, but boy, they need better things to do with their time. I'm sure she's a nice person. She doesn't know anything about tornadoes. Come on. But at that network level, you should have researchers that get it right. To me, and I know nothing about journalism, nothing. But to me, it ought to be about getting it right. Gosh, I just don't understand that. By the way, the next night, they did come on and do a story about how good the warnings were, which is crazy. One night she said there's no warning, and the next night here's a story about how good the warnings were. There's all these inconsistencies, but I'm thankful that they did that. So this is what I'm challenging the weather enterprise to do, and I'm challenging everybody across our enterprise, those that work in local markets like me, those that work for the National Weather Service, those that work for the Weather Channel, commercial ventures like AccuWeather, weather graphics vendors, and those people that make the apps you use on your phone. Excuse the term up here, but you know what we call them? Crap apps. How do most people get weather today? Come on, you're not going to wait until the news to find out what the weather's going to do. That's insane. That's Ron Burgundy from 1978, You're going to look at your phone, all right? Which is great. It is up to us to provide products and services on a digital platform that are easy to use, that you can access. That's up to us to do that. And I'd like to think that we do. But here's an interesting thing. We've learned that most people do not download one single app. Isn't that weird? Some of you might have 50, 60, 70 of those things. I've got a whole bunch, but most people just get the phone and they use the stock weather app. What do you get off a stock weather app? You get basically a picture and 3 numbers. The picture is of a little weather cartoon looking thing. It's a sun or a cloud or something, maybe a lightning bolt. It's got a high, a low, and what's the other number? Probability of precipitation, POP. So if you look down there at that app on April 27th, and the sun broke out in the middle of the day, it looked just like this at this time of the day on April 27th, 2011. You're looking at your crap app, and it's got a little lightning bolt. You think, well, that's got to be wrong because it's sunny, and you put it back in your pocket, and that's not working. This will not help you. And we're trying to get with these developers we've got to move on past the little picture and the cartoon thing and the numbers and all that. And let me just say this, let me chase another rabbit here because I got 5 minutes, and I apologize for the time mix-up today, but everybody in here should have a warning app on your phone. You realize your stock weather app is not a warning app, okay? And I don't sell apps. I'm not in the app selling business. All your phones do have wireless emergency alerts. You ever had an Amber Alert scare you half to death? One night that thing went off, and I was freaking. I was about ready to go in the shower thinking we had some kind of tornado going on that I didn't know about. It was an Amber Alert. And I knew it wasn't weather because it was like clear and it was cold, but in theory, you should get tornado warnings on your phone via wireless emergency alert. Your vendors build that in these phones. We don't know how that's done. We don't know the reliability. We recommend good warning apps. The app I use is called Weather Radio by WDT. That stands for Warning Decision Technologies. I know these guys, I know the infrastructure, and I know that it works. And trust me, I get no kickback on I get nothing. In fact, I challenged these guys after April 27, 2011, give your app away free for a day. Let's see if you got a servant's heart. And by golly, they did. They gave away 100,000 apps free that day. It's only like $4, but that's the one my wife has, that's the one our 2 boys have. But we're trying to get these developers to do something about getting some better communication about severe weather in these apps. We're working internally on severe weather risk areas so that everything's consistent. On behalf of the weather enterprise, I apologize to you for this insane confusion where you got local weather service offices with terms and colors and the Storm Prediction Center with their own terms and colors, all the TV stations. We're going to fix that. We are going to get that fixed. We can't even use the same colors. It's like you just want to go into a first grade class. Hello, friends. Let's use the same crayon today. We can do this as a weather enterprise. We got to dump all these, DEFCONs and this. We've got to standardize. We have standard indices that we need to be using. And let me just say one more thing, and I've got to stop these call to action messages. In Oklahoma, anybody from Oklahoma City here? That's a great weather market like Birmingham. They have some wonderful people there, but it's stunning. You'll watch one channel, there's a tornado warning, and they say, unless you are underground, you will not survive. You change the channel, and the next guy's saying, get in your car and drive south. And the next guy says, go to a small room on the lowest floor. It is bewildering. We can't even agree on these call to action messages. And let me just say this, I've got engineering studies that prove my point. In 99% of the cases, if you go into a small room on the lowest floor, near the center, away from windows, you're fine. Yes, there will be a 1% case study where you've got an EF5 that wipes everything off, you're lofted, and you lose your life. Truth is, if you are underground, that's really not going to help you either. You do not have to be underground. You do not. Everybody in here has got a small room. The biggest problem we have in our state, away from cities, most people live in what? Mobile homes. Mobile homes are a death trap. And you can bring in somebody from the mobile home lobby, the manufactured home lobby, and they can say mobile homes are perfectly safe during a tornado. Anybody says that, they're insane. They go airborne. And away from municipalities in our state, 71% of our people live in mobile homes. And please understand, I'm a big believer in them. They offer affordable housing. They're great. But you can't stay in them during a tornado. You can't stay in a car. You've got to be in that small room, lowest floor, near the center, away from windows. And again, let me chase one more rabbit and I've got to stop. Part of the problem, April 27th, you know why some people died? The cry wolf syndrome. What does that mean? That means you got people like me, these bags of hot air on television, that are always on television, and we're doing tornado warnings, and this is what we heard back in the verbatims in the research. I hear those things all the time, those tornado warnings, and nothing ever happens. And accordingly, they ignore the warning. That's on our back. What do you think the false alarm ratio was in 2011? 80%. That's not excusable. There's no excuse for that. 80% of tornado warnings were false. That's bad. So I challenge the Weather Service, and I'm not blaming, look, we all have part of the blame. You do, I do, we all do. But I challenge these guys, let's go back to basic science. They did that, and we've cut that sucker in half. The false alarm ratio has gone from 80% to 40%, and we're hoping to get it down to about 30. We can't do much better than that. But that's a remarkable improvement. Little things like these high-base storms never produced tornadoes. They were issuing tornado warnings for storms with LCLs, lifted condensation levels above 1,000 meters. You never have tornadoes, not one since 1950. Little things like that. So we've got that thing down. So warnings do mean something. And we got to work on these winter storm impact measures.